Yo, so in the last couple of videos, we're talking about how do rigid methods, i.e. step-by-step procedures for designing things, how can those engender greater originality in the work? So I talked about two of our methods. Now I'm going to talk about, again, one of our methods, but what is really the normal status quo way of working. So we have a method called the conceptor. We reserve that for the type of project where the goal is to create a concept for a project, like an actual verbal concept. Because in a lot of what we do or what we try to do, there's not actually a verbal concept. There's not actually like a metaphor. There's a lot of formal discovery and free association, but there's not like a statement of this cover is about the relationship between the two artists. Instead, it's whatever, vague and free associative. So coming to the conceptor, why it makes the work better, why the methods we use make the work better, a couple of things. First and foremost is the fact that we reserve the method for when time allows. So one of the reasons that we have these different methods, besides it being fun, is the typographer method, you immediately start working towards a productive end as soon as the project is kicked off. The producer method, you're working towards a productive, usable end within the first couple days. A conceptual project, my argument would be you're not working towards a productive, useful end for 2 weeks, maybe more, maybe a month, depending on the nature of the project. And the reason for that is that you have to do research. Research is what you're reading, thinking about, looking at, listening to, people you're talking to, whatever. Every project has a different amount and type of research that needs to happen. To come up with a concept, you have to do research, and you have to do enough research to guarantee that you'll get to concepts. And part of how we deal with the fact that, well, what if we just don't come up with an idea? Because that makes it hard to be original. One of the easiest ways to make redundant derivative work is because you couldn't come up with an idea. So then you have to scramble for some other way to get to the end. So for us, this happens in three ways. The first is you do the research, and then you analyze the research. And then you look for a thing called an insight. So there's a couple things that happen with it. One, ideas are popping up, if you're lucky. Ideas are popping up as you're doing the research, and you write those down and you capture them so that you have them. Two, as you're analyzing the research, ideas are coming up and you're writing those down. But then the thing that we're looking for, and these are what I would consider executional ideas. The thing that we're looking for is this kernel of an idea. I have a video, I will link to it, called Isolating the Insight. But the example I use is I'm doing a bunch of research about Ringo Starr, and an insight that I come up with is Ringo is the coolest Beatle. Because there's a bunch of evidence in the research that supports that idea. Now, Ringo is the coolest Beatle is not a concept, right? It's like an opinion, it's a point of view, it's a statement. But what I can do with that is then come up with concepts to illustrate that idea. Like right off the bat, what would be like the a way to do that? I could take like Ringo on stage, Ed Sullivan show, mask out the other Beatles, show the Screaming Girls, or something like that. It's an idea coming up within 10 seconds. Or I could look through the research for other clues that helps to support that. So like, let's just say for the sake of argument, I'm making a cover for Ringo Starr, and what I do is I make a drum set made out of flowers. And what that's an allusion to is George Harrison decorating Ringo's drum set with flowers as a thank you for him rejoining the band. Further evidence, Ringo's the coolest Beatle. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to look for that insight. And that's going to be, and then what we're going to do with those insights, we're going to find a bunch of them, and then we're going to write down concepts based off of them, just like I just did now. Who knows if they're good or bad? The ideal situation is you do a ton of them, and then at the end you just pick the best ones. From those concepts, we'll then sketch where they might go. The next thing is going to be Bedno diagrams. Now, if we're successful in our insight stuff, we might only use the Bedno diagrams to come up with very bold, iconic ideas. So we'd be like, okay, what are ways to show that Ringo is the coolest? Because maybe this is just what the whole project is about, Ringo being the coolest. And we'll be like, okay, well, what things that we could use? We can show a picture of him, like a portrait on our grid. We can have his name. We could have drum set, I don't know, whatever. And then along another axis, we could have symbols that denote coolness. And then we go like, okay, sunglasses in Ringo, sunglasses in his name, sunglasses in drum set, blah, blah, blah. That's actually a terrible example, but I'm making it up as I go along, so deal with it. But I'll post a link to a deck that will show you Bedno diagrams in action, but they work really well when you have the simplest, most visual ideas possible. If you want to get to those kind of classic George Lois sort of big idea type things, and you're not smart like me, Bedno diagrams is going to do it. You just enter in a bunch of symbols on one axis and another bunch of symbols on another axis or another type of image, and then you just start sketching how they could fit together, and boom, you have ideas. One of the reasons that we want to do that is to get somewhere new, especially for us who don't tend to have super iconic ideas. So that already is going to put us in a kind of original space, because now we're enacting a game that creates ideas. And furthermore, we may end up also doing that with the insights. So we might take that insight and then be like, okay, we got this insight. Maybe we have a grid and it's got 5 different insights. And then we have another grid that is about materials, image making strategies, other ideas, and we're gonna start mashing them up. And again, I'll post a link to a video that shows that in action, because today I'm doing a terrible job describing this. That again helps push us into the arena of originality in terms of now we're not even relying solely on our own brain. We're using this, again, this game basically to come up with ideas. In our portfolio, like if you go to our website, the RUR poster for the Soap Factory, the Resonating Bodies poster, the MCAD Liberal Art Series posters, those all come out of Bedno diagrams of more kind of heady stuff. So, and like the example of RUR, the Bedno diagram led to a place we would never go. Like it's never occurred to me to do a kind of data visualization type approach because my brain isn't naturally wired that way. Resonating Bodies, the concept is an infographic of all the artists in the show relationship. I don't have ideas like that. I am not that fucking smart. That was the Bedno diagram taking the phrase relationships and something else. I can't remember now. But the Bedno diagram led to it, just sketching it out. And then all of a sudden there's the thing. And I point those out because those are 2 of my favorite projects. So Just the fact that the process leads to some place that I know I would never get to organically, that's a really good sign. Now, one of the things that we realize though is you need time for research, and you need the time to do your ideation. And the way that we kind of see it is we want to commit all into a process. So if we're going to go with the idea that we're going to come up with a concept, then we want to give ourselves the time and the tools to come up with a concept. And that's why we're going to hit it from multiple angles. Given a broad enough time frame and enough budget, we'll also do straight formal studies, straight typographic studies, and other kind of more meandering, twisty stuff, because we just want to see how much ground we can cover, and then we'll pick the stuff that works or is interesting. But that for us is like why we no longer say that we just come up with concepts in the sort of normal way that designers work, the normal way that we worked from, I don't know, students up till, well, hell, actually up until 2 years ago. We thought every project had to have a concept. And so we had invented all these hacks for when you didn't have time to develop a concept. And the thing I realized is like, the hacks were effective for coming up with concepts quickly, but I don't think the work was as rich as it could have been if we had actually been like, oh, okay, in this context, we're not going to come up with an idea, we're going to do this other thing. Because maybe the projects where we use these hacks would have been more original and better if we'd actually done a formal process right from the start. I hope that makes sense. If you watch the Bedno diagram video, I think it's going to be very illuminating. And if you have any follow-up questions about Bedno diagrams or the idea of the insight, leave a comment. Happy to answer them. Take it easy.